Recorded Books presents Back from the Brink Inside the NYPD and New York City's Extraordinary 1990s Crime Drop by Peter Moskos. Narrated by Jonathan Todd Ross. Preface. A quote from Billy Gorda, NYPD. In many ways, this is an untold story. This was a time when people were allowed to think. It was a time when cops were allowed to look at this stuff and say, why do we do that? And how do we do that? And what's the better way? It was a time to experiment. A time to think about all the other things you could do. It was our Athenian period. More than half a century ago, America's largest city began to be seen as fundamentally out of control. Certain high-profile crimes and victims became household names. So many movies portrayed a city, and often its police department, in crisis, that New York urban noir became a genre of its own. The Incident, The Taking of Pelham 123, Taxi Driver, The Warriors, New Jack City, Prince of the City, King of New York, Escape from New York, Death Wish. Even Miss Piggy and the Muppets Take Manhattan was inevitably victimized by a Central Park mugger. While the public's fear of crime can often exceed reality, in New York the reality was dangerous and very bloody. Commuters rode the subway in fear. Residents avoided parks after dark. New York makes one think of the collapse of civilization, wrote Saul Bellow, about Sodom and Gomorrah, the end of the world. The end wouldn't come as a surprise here. Many people already bank on it. Fear of crime was visceral, palpable, and many who had the means to flee the city simply did. Extreme real-life dystopian predictions, an ever more dangerous generation of crack babies and super predators, the latter phrase coined in late 1995, never came to pass. Prominent criminologist James Allen Fox noted that demographics, while not exactly destiny, was indicative of a more violent future. So long as we fool ourselves in thinking that we're winning the war against crime, we may be blindsided by this bloodbath of teenage violence that is lurking in the future. Then something happened. With new leadership and a new philosophy of policing, one focused on reducing crime, fear of crime, and disorder, violence would plummet at a rate that a generation of academics and other experts had previously deemed impossible. Murders declined 70% in the 1990s, from 2,262 in 1990 to 671 in 1999. The most significant decline began in 1994, when murders dropped nearly 20% a year for 5 consecutive years. Ultimately, over the next 2 decades, even as the population of New York City increased, murders declined 87%. In 2017 and 2018, there were fewer than 300 murders in New York. This is a phenomenal achievement for an American city of more than 8 million people. Since then, murders have increased, first slowly, and then significantly in 2020, before a gradual decline. But murders in New York City remain low per capita compared to most other American cities. It wasn't just murders and shootings that declined. Other crimes fell in sync, and the city rebounded. In 1997, U.S. News and World Report declared, "The Big Apple comes roaring back, and other cities wonder how it was done." Decades later, we're still wondering. One of the factors in New York City's crime drop was the police, but the role they played has not been fully understood. Back from the Brink is not the only story one could tell, but it is one that hasn't yet been told. Within academia, there is a strong reluctance to credit policing for the crime decline. Sociologists said the crime decline wasn't supposed to happen. Indeed, it couldn't happen. And for a surprisingly long period of time, many insisted it wasn't happening. In 1977, renowned sociologists said that police have sold themselves as crime fighters, but cannot control crime any more than they can alter the economic structure, the political system, the educational system, or fundamentally affect the birth rate or patterns of migration. The dominant sociological root causes concept of crime, dismissive of any positive role of policing, has been repeated time and time again. First, be honest. Admit that no war against crime will ever be won. If crime rates in America are to decline in the long term, the causes will lie in major changes in social policies toward job creation, income maintenance, medical care, housing, education, drugs, and firearms. In New York City, none of these factors changed majorly in the 1990s, and yet crime rates declined. In fact, poverty increased. In pure numbers, 1.67 million New Yorkers living in poverty in 2000 would have constituted the fifth largest city in America. So, why did crime go down? New York did not lock everybody up. Locally, even as arrests in the city increased almost every year between 1991 and 1998, New York City's jail population began a decades-long decline in 1992. Some credit national variables, such as legalized abortion or less lead in the environment. But time-lagged environmental explanations are particularly weak at explaining a sudden decline in crime in New York City within a specific year, much less a specific month. The demographics of the city changed, but the city as a whole did not gentrify. Inequality increased, the rich got richer, social services were cut, and the poor got poorer. Yet the city became safer. Immigration was a factor. New York City had a net gain of 700,000 immigrants in the 1990s. By 2000, nearly one-third of New Yorkers were foreign-born. Nearly 30% of Black New Yorkers claimed immigrant ancestry in 2000, compared to just 7% nationally. Without this foreign influx, the population of New York City would have continued its decline, and the crime rate would have assuredly been higher. Today, there remains ingrained professional doubt that police, policing, and prosecution, all of which radically changed in the 1990s, through the actions of dynamic individuals who gave their testimony.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.